Hey guys, it's Matthew here once again, and I wanted to show you a character that I worked on just before I left for a climbing trip into Queensland, which took me out of commission for 3 or 4 days, and I will probably post a bit of a video going over some of the stuff there because it was just a bunch of videos for the competition that we did. And anyway, I'm back, and at the moment there's a character I want to show you, which is a Inquisitor, Blade Flurry. I started this character just a little bit ago, and it's only level 83 at this point, and I'm still figuring out a few passives, a few gear choices, but basically it's just supposed to be Blade Flurry with all of your physical converted to elemental, and then scaling that elemental as an Inquisitor. You can see here what the Blade Flurry looks like nowadays, and the area is quite juicy. It's definitely come a long way in this league with some of the changes, but as well as that, Pulverize, Rage, things like that have made Blade Flurry way nicer too. You don't really feel a lack of area in this build at all anymore. Blade Flurry is now a very high tier clear skill as well as being a very high tier single target skill. For the past few leagues it's only really been a good single target skill, but nowadays this area is just more than enough, and as well as that you can see the pretty new Herald of Ash effect, which is Empyrean Herald of Ash. Sorry, it looks Empyrean, but it's called Sun Prism Herald of Ash. And I do want to remind you the character's still pretty much well underdone, so the life total will go up quite dramatically. I should hit something like 6,200 life by the end of it. I do think, with decent enough defenses, because we have those 3 perma endurance charges, got a Taste of Hate, got the Lion's Roar. Basically, it should be good enough. It's currently using an Abyssus, but it hasn't yet died, and I don't think it should die if I take things carefully enough, but at the same time it's going to have absolutely absurd damage because Blade Flurry right now is putting out some serious numbers, the likes of which you might not have seen on many other characters. Because it scales so goddamn well with the additional physical it now has built into the gem, means you don't need super insane gear to get that high up, but we're still trying to min-max our character just a little bit through the use of currency and good gear either way. As well as that, I do have to mention that the Abyssus is very largely a luxury in this build. It should end up pulling something like 6 million DPS, which is more than enough for just about everything. The Abyssus is just because, well, if you can, why not do it? And currently it seems like definitely can, given the defenses of the character through the Taste of Hate, the additional armors and physical reductions, as well as that the fortifies, and the largest defense of all, just don't get hit. The way that currently this build is working, as you can see against these Maraketh legions, is you pretty much will always be initiating before other things and shattering, freezing, or one-shotting the enemies around you. So you almost never actually take any damage on this type of a setup because of the vast amount of cold damage we deal, the large area that Blade Flurry has, and then the attack speed that it's also got in conjunction with all of that. So as you can see with some of this just non-stop bullshit on the screen, you barely ever take damage because Blade Flurry hits so consistently, so rapidly, and from basically a ranged distance now, since that's, well, what melee skills are now. And yeah, you very rarely actually take damage. Since I've put on the Abyssus and gone from level 70 to like 83, I could probably not even count on one hand the amount of times I've taken more than like 1,000 damage, because just things never actually get the opportunity to swing at you. But if they do, when they do, I think this character should have enough types of defense that we won't really be troubled, and it's quite likely going to be like the most well-rounded and strongest clearer for maps as well as bosses this league as a character. That said, there will be a bit of investment as an Inquisitor because of the whole physical to elemental conversion, or the additional damage on things like your neck, your foil, maybe some real serious jewels like a Watcher's Eye, but I'm probably just going to go a basic one. And there is still quite a lot to go on this character, fitting in a hatred and getting things going there for aura reservation, because I'm not quite happy with it at the moment, but more or less just wanted to highlight the fact that Blade Flurry is seriously pogged here at the moment. And to begin with, the league start, I did give you a good Berserker Blade Flurry build that you could play, and it has been proven to be a very strong build. And then there's been some other ones floating about, like Champion Impales, that just have absurd levels of damage, but not quite as much flashiness, I don't think, as something like this. So very easy to build, very easy to scale, but if you want the extra flash, then you go something like the Inquisitor. So I want to go over how I've built this character so far and the future of it in the next few days. So the character here we have is currently level 83 Inquisitor, called Morning BF Longneck, going about the VB Longneck memes, and obviously he's got a kind of a long neck if you don't gear him up just properly with the right micros. To get that out of the way, the microtransactions here, to make him look kind of Diablo-ish, that I've done on a few other characters, is Demon Parasite, Gore Skull, whatever happening there, and Fire Cloak. Just that little combo there gets you going with the Wasteland Horns too. The character itself, though, is trying to be somewhat of a min-maxed Blade Flurry, so I've put in a good bit of various currency to make sorts of things. I got this pretty luckily in about one serrated fossil just for the crit, the maim, and the fire, and then I went with remove suffix, or lock in all suffixes and then slam until I got a decent result like the life roll. But, you know, obviously you don't need a chest this big. It's just a nice chest with some serrated fossils going. And you can do many other different chest choices, things like lore weaves, carcass jacks, impulses. Still serrated chests are going to be your best bet because of the level 1 main built in, which gives you just that little bit of extra 7th link damage. And then the crit is fairly nice, but also not 100% crucial because we do have quite a lot of crit in the build either way. So that's going to be the most sort of out there whack item on the build, but it's by no means necessary, just like a lot of this stuff on this character, considering we're going to be hitting something like 6 million plus damage in the end anyway. The weapons are pretty simple, but once again, a bit of currency involved. You get this sort of attack speed and extra cold roll. You see it every couple of hundred alterations when crafting. You then have to regal and annul until you just get the 2 mods. And then if you simply multi-mod around that, you get a pretty nice 370 DPS foil that also has very good attack speed, and then the actual extra physical as cold or as fire, but we're scaling cold a little bit higher, so that's why we go for the cold. I tried to do the same with the other foil, but got lightning damage instead. Still a very good result. Even pure physical damage, it's still a very good result. This type of character can use just about any sort of foil, pure fizz, a good Ellie, Ellie as extra, or fizz as extra Ellie, all kinds of stuff, because the idea here is you're scaling fairly generic damage throughout the passive tree, just mostly elemental type damage, or one-handed damage, sword damage, and then ultimately a lot of crit and crit multi, which gets you just all kinds of generic types of damage. So the passive tree does go kind of all over the place, and it does get a good little bit of crit here. It does get the crit sword nodes all the way over here, and it does also convert 40% of its physical into cold through Winter Spirit. The rest of our conversion currently comes from the glove enchant over here. So at the moment, you can see I've got 64% converted to cold. If I get a Watcher's Eye that does hatred cold conversion as well, then it does end up pretty sweet with something like, well, easily 100% cold converted, but it gains us a bit of damage over this thing that I've been using, which is just precision Watcher's Eye at the moment, nothing particularly special, just gives you 15 attack speed. A hatred one in the end, if I'm going for, let's say, 4 million DPS, converting all my damage will add another 400-500k or so. So it's not 100% crucial because those Hatred Watcher's Eyes are going to cost about 4 exalts. You can instead go pure Wrath, for example, and then the extra physical as lightning. Or you could go Wrath with the whole conversion. You can go Anger with some conversion. You can really be quite flexible with this type of character because it can scale all kinds of damage and use all kinds of gear and passives. This is currently the proposed passive tree, and the next few points should probably go for some life here or some life there, as well as potentially subbing out some of this melee damage and area for things like accuracy and crit, or this accuracy and crit, considering that I probably need a bit more accuracy. Couldn't hurt to have more attack speed, maybe some jewels. we'll still have to wait and see, but currently it seems like things like this should be worth it for the overall single target on the build. But that's the passive tree, and the things we take are Sanctuary, Pious Path, and then you go for Righteous Providence, and then Inevitable Judgment. You will always have Consecrated Ground, so you don't have to worry about things like getting frozen, shocked, ignited. So that is the absolute pinnacle of comfort with a build like this. And then mana's pretty good for regen, but you still definitely need a little bit of leech for both mana and life. So this node comes into play there. Aside from that, like I mentioned, Abyssus, a lot of damage. What else is there to say? You do take a bit of damage, but we do have plenty of defense in the form of 3 endurance charges, a Taste of Hate being up most of the time, your Lion's Roar being up. You do have these nodes over here, and I will get a cast when damage taken set up pretty soon, so it should end up being a fairly durable character overall. And aside from that, well, the gear is, as you can see, just usually made around a couple of mods. Physical is extra lightning, physical is extra cold, some crit multi. Crit multi is not super important here because we already have 600 and I can still get quite a bit more if I want. So I wouldn't be too worried about min-maxing the amulet all that much with the crit multi. It's just if you can afford it, but we're looking for some endurance charges. Don't have to have the minus mana cost, you can put it on a different ring, but currently I've just got this ring here that's got a bit of life, accuracy, and wed, min endurance. Multi-modded that ring on the previous character, still very much reusable, and bought a belt for 1 exalt for the flask charge reduction, and then crafted on some elemental damage with attack skills myself. But mostly you're just looking for some life and some resists. If you can get reduced flask charges, it makes the character a little bit smoother, so I would recommend getting that too. Boots, you're mostly looking for life, some movement speed. You don't have to have that because we do a whole lot of leaping with this character, but having a bit of movement speed does make your dodging and your traveling just a little bit smoother. And then maybe dexterity, because you do need a fair amount of dexterity if you're going to use these types of foils. Now currently the POB DPS should be something like 5 million on this character. That is with, of course, just about everything ticked, and then the single target setup rather than my usual setup. So Conk Effect, Melee Fizz in place of Pulverize and Area, but this isn't really what the character is just yet. I'm showing what it possibly could be, and then that's also including a different Watcher's Eye, a Hatred, and all that kind of stuff, which I haven't yet done, obviously. But there is one thing I forgot to tick here, and that's blinding. So we are blinding enemies, and that is 5.5 million damage now. So what we're looking at here as far as our actual setup is concerned is Blade Flurry, Rage support, so that is quite useful because it gives you the added fizz, but then a lot of extra attack and attack damage and attack speed. You got early damage with attacks, Pulverize, Ink Area, and Infused Channeling. Infused Channeling is pretty damn good because it does give you that added bit of defense as well, but basically all the area you need on Blade Flurry, or most melee skills now, will come from Ink Area and Pulverize, and that gets you full screen AoE, and that's why I'm quite likely going to be dropping these 3 nodes, because they're not bad for a bit of extra damage, bit of extra area, but it's really not that necessary, and I think I could make a much better use of that out of just filling out my accuracy, maybe some attack speed, maybe even some life. It's just really not worth getting more area when Pulverize and Ink Area just take care of everything. Now currently I'm running Herald of Ash, Sand Stance, Blood Stance, using a high level precision, which I think I'm going to take down a bit, and War Banner. I do still plan to get a Vile War Chief, I think, probably a Berserk Gem as well, and a cast when damage taken setup. Currently this is the kind of just slightly scuffed version of the character that's still being figured out. You might want to copy, or just grab a Blade Flurry, put it into a different build, a Slayer, a Berserker, a Gladiator, a Champion, a Pathfinder, a Raider, an Elementalist, a Scion, fucking anything you want. Blade Flurry is just a hot piece of gem right now that I do suggest most people play with, because the scaling and the comfort of this build is, or this gem, is quite insane right now. So thank you very much for watching. Hopefully in the next video I show you some serious action, and it's probably going to be my best 5-way Legion character, but I'm going to have to wait and see until it actually happens. So thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.